The summer sun was brutal that afternoon, the kind that made the world shimmer with heat and tension. In a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Dallas, laughter and splashing sounds echoed from a private community pool where families gathered for a weekend escape. It was supposed to be just another Saturday, but what unfolded that day would soon ignite outrage across the nation. Her name was Alicia Turner, a 32-year-old nurse who had just come off a double shift at the hospital. She wanted nothing more than to cool off and breathe for a moment. The pool was open to the public, but she felt the eyes the moment she walked through the gate, the kind of gaze every black person knows too well. Unspoken judgment, subtle hostility wrapped in polite smiles. Still, Alicia ignored it, dropped her towel by a chair, and slipped into the water. She didn't notice the two officers sitting near the edge, both off-duty, wearing civilian clothes, beer cans by their feet. Their laughter carried an edge, their eyes lingering too long. She'd seen that type before, men who wore authority like armor, even when they weren't on the clock. Minutes later, things took a turn so fast, so violent, that no one could process what they were witnessing. What started as a joke became a nightmare. Within seconds, Alicia was being held underwater by two men who claimed to teach her respect. The water muffled her screams as she fought to breathe, her body thrashing against hands that were supposed to protect, not destroy. But Alicia didn't die that day. No, she rose from that water not just alive, but transformed. What she did next would shake an entire police department to its core and force America to confront yet another truth it wanted to drown. Alicia Turner had never been the kind of woman who sought attention. Her life was steady, quiet, and filled with purpose. The sort that rarely makes headlines but holds entire communities together. She was a registered nurse at Dallas Memorial, known by her co-workers for her calm under pressure and her gentle way of easing patients' fears. Born and raised in the South, Alicia had spent her entire life learning how to navigate spaces that weren't built for her comfort. Classrooms, workplaces, and neighborhoods where she was often the only black face in the room. Her childhood had taught her resilience early. Her mother, Denise Turner, worked 2 jobs as a cleaner to raise Alicia and her younger brother, Jamal, after her father died when Alicia was only 10. Denise used to say, "Don't ever let them make you small, baby. You stand tall, even when they look at you like you don't belong." Those words became Alicia's armor, silent, invisible, but always there. Life had been kind to her lately, or so she thought. She'd just been approved for a small mortgage on her first home, a modest townhouse near her hospital. She was saving for graduate school, hoping to become a nurse practitioner. On weekends, she volunteered at a community clinic for low-income families. People called her the angel in scrubs. But even angels can find themselves cornered by cruelty they never asked for. That Saturday, Alicia had decided to visit the community pool near her friend's apartment complex, a small luxury after 3 back-to-back night shifts. She'd hesitated before going. Something in her gut told her to stay home, but exhaustion and the summer heat won out. She packed her swimsuit, a towel, sunscreen, and a paperback novel she'd been meaning to finish. She had no idea that the next few hours would become a nightmare, one that would echo across the country. The pool sat in the heart of a newly gentrified neighborhood. Most of the residents were white families who had recently moved in, drawn by the safety and new schools. Alicia, though, had friends there from nursing school, one of whom had given her a guest pass. It wasn't the first time she'd been there, but she always noticed the same subtle shift in energy when she walked through the gates. Conversations quieted. Eyes followed. Mothers pulled their kids closer, without realizing it. Those things didn't surprise her anymore, but they still stung. That afternoon, the air was heavy with heat and unspoken tension. Alicia found a quiet corner, laid out her towel, and dipped her feet into the cool water. Nearby, 2 off-duty police officers, Brian Keller and Derek Shaw, lounged with beers, talking loud enough for everyone to hear. They were known in the area, often patrolling the nearby district. They had the easy arrogance of men who knew they were untouchable. Alicia kept her distance, trying to ignore the occasional comment drifting her way. It started small, jokes about pool rules, about how she'd better not mess with their water. She'd heard worse. She'd seen worse. But something about the laughter that followed, low and ugly, made her stomach twist. Still, she stayed calm, pretending not to hear. Then came the moment that changed everything. As she swam a few quiet laps across the pool, a ball landed near her shoulder. One of the officers called out, "Hey, throw it back!" She did, tossing it gently toward them. But the man sneered, muttering something to his friend before standing up and walking toward her. The conversation that followed would later be described by witnesses as tense but controlled. No one intervened. No one thought it would escalate. But Alicia could feel it. That pulse of danger, the shift from words to something darker. What happened next wasn't caught on video. Not at first. But when it finally hit the internet days later, it would explode like wildfire. For now, all Alicia knew was that she was surrounded, cornered in a place where everyone saw but no one spoke. And when she went under that water, it wasn't just her body they tried to drown. It was her dignity, her right to exist without fear. But Alicia Turner was no victim. What she would do in the hours and days after that attack would turn her pain into a weapon and force America to look into a mirror it had long avoided. When Alicia's head broke the surface that day, she came up coughing, gasping, her lungs screaming for air. The sound of water slapping against concrete, the heavy breathing of men, and the shocked murmurs of bystanders blended into a surreal blur. Her vision swam. Sunlight fractured across the water's surface, and the first thing she saw was Brian Keller's smirk, that chilling expression of satisfaction that said, "We can do this, and no one will stop us." For a moment, no one did. Mothers clutched their children, men whispered, and the pool manager froze near the gate. It was like time had paused in fear of what to do. Alicia's body trembled as she pushed herself up, her hands shaking. "You're lucky we didn't arrest you for trespassing," Derek Shaw muttered under his breath, his voice low, but deliberate enough for her to hear. She stood in silence, dripping, humiliated, but alive. Every fiber of her being told her to run, to leave and never come back. But deep inside, something shifted. It wasn't fear anymore. It was fury, controlled, sharp, and steady. She had spent her whole life swallowing indignities, telling herself to stay calm, to be the better person. But this time was different. This time, she'd nearly died for no reason but the color of her skin. Without saying a word, Alicia gathered her things and left. Her car keys shook in her wet hand as she unlocked her Honda. As she sat behind the wheel, still dripping water, her phone buzzed. A text from her brother, Jamal. "Hey, sis, you okay? You sound off." She wanted to type yes, to bury it. But instead, she sent one line that would change everything. "They tried to drown me." Within hours, Jamal was at her apartment. When he saw her, the bruises around her wrists, the scratches on her shoulders, something in him broke. Jamal was a high school teacher and community organizer, quiet but fiercely protective. He didn't yell or rage. Instead, he opened his laptop. "We're not letting this slide," he said. "Not this time." They filed a report that night, but the first officer at the desk barely hid his indifference. "You're saying 2 off-duty cops attacked you? You got witnesses?" he asked, typing slow, bored. Alicia's voice was calm. There were at least 20 people there, and a camera by the gate. The officer sighed. "We'll look into it." His tone said otherwise. By Monday morning, Alicia's story had already started to spread, not through the police, but through social media. Jamal posted a photo of her injuries with a caption that read, "2 off-duty cops tried to drown my sister at a community pool in Dallas. No arrest, no suspension, no accountability. Share this before they bury it." The post caught fire. Within hours, it had thousands of shares, hundreds of comments, and one crucial message from a teenage girl who'd been at the pool that day. "I recorded part of it. I didn't know what to do. I'm sorry." The video was shaky, filmed from behind a chair, but it was enough. It showed the 2 men grabbing Alicia, forcing her underwater as others shouted in shock. It captured Keller's laugh, cruel, unmistakable. And it showed Alicia's body go limp for a few seconds before she resurfaced. The clip ended abruptly, but it was enough to light a fire under a city that had seen too many of these stories end in silence. By Tuesday, local news stations were calling her phone nonstop. Headlines began to appear. Black woman claims OFF duty cops attacked her at community pool. Dallas PD under fire after alleged assault by officers. The department responded with a short statement. The Dallas Police Department is aware of allegations involving 2 off-duty officers. The matter is under internal review. But Alicia knew what that meant. Stalling, protecting, burying. Still, she refused to be invisible again. With Jamal's help, she reached out to a civil rights lawyer named Tanya Morrison, known for her work on racial discrimination cases. Tanya met her the next day, her expression grim as she watched the footage. "This isn't just assault," she said. "This is attempted murder, and we're not letting them spin it otherwise." Word spread fast. Protests began forming outside the precinct where Keller and Shaw worked. Signs read, "Justice for Alicia." "We can't breathe, not even in water. Protect and serve, or drown in silence." But with the spotlight came danger. Strange cars began parking outside Alicia's apartment. Anonymous messages appeared in her inbox. "You're ruining good men's lives. You asked for it. Drop it or you'll regret it." Fear crept in, but so did resolve. Alicia started keeping a journal, documenting every detail, every threat, every call ignored by the department. "They can take my peace," she wrote one night, "but not my truth." Days turned into weeks. The city pulsed with tension. Reporters camped outside her building. Politicians tweeted their outrage. Yet Keller and Shaw remained free. Suspended with pay, the ultimate insult. When questioned, the police union claimed lack of sufficient evidence, dismissing the video as inconclusive. That's when Alicia made her move. She'd been quiet on social media, letting the story swirl. But one evening, she opened her phone camera, hit record, and spoke directly to the world. "I'm Alicia Turner. I'm a nurse. I save lives for a living. 2 men who swore to protect people tried to drown me, and the system is trying to drown the truth. But I won't stay silent. I didn't die that day, and I won't disappear now." The video exploded, millions of views within a day. Celebrities shared it. News anchors quoted her words. And suddenly, the story wasn't just about Alicia. It was about every black person who'd been told to stay quiet, to endure, to move on. For the first time in her life, Alicia wasn't just surviving racism. She was fighting it head-on. But what she didn't know yet was that the real battle, the one that would leave an entire city speechless, was still ahead. Because when justice finally came knocking, it would come in a way no one expected. By the 3rd week after the incident, Dallas had turned into a storm. What began as a single woman's cry for justice had swelled into a full-blown national movement. Protesters filled the streets holding up photos of Alicia Turner, her calm, unbroken face becoming a symbol of defiance. The video of her being dragged underwater had now been seen over 50 million times across platforms. People weren't just angry, they were demanding answers. Still, the Dallas Police Department stayed silent. No arrests, no apologies, no accountability. It was as if they were waiting for the noise to fade. But Alicia had no intention of letting that happen. Tanya Morrison, her lawyer, filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against both officers and the city itself. The claim was bold: use of excessive force with intent to kill, driven by racial bias. Legal experts called it one of the most aggressive cases of its kind. And while police unions scoffed on TV, saying she was chasing fame, Alicia's quiet strength turned every sneer into another spark for public outrage. Then came the turning point. One morning, Tanya called with urgency in her voice. "Alicia, you need to see this." When Alicia arrived at the office, Tanya had a flash drive plugged into her laptop. A security guard from the pool came forward, she said. He turned over this footage, full angle from the entrance camera. Alicia watched in silence as the new video played. It showed everything: the smirks, the taunts, the shove, and finally the moment Keller and Shaw held her under the water. There was no denying it now. It was crystal clear. There were even timestamps, proving they'd lied in their statements. The 2 men weren't defending themselves. They were attacking. Tanya leaned back. "We're taking this to the press," she said. Alicia nodded slowly, her hands trembling. She didn't speak, but her eyes burned with quiet fire. For the first time, she knew she wasn't powerless anymore. That night, CNN aired the footage. The segment was short, just 45 seconds, but it was enough to send shockwaves through the country. Breaking news. New video shows 2 off-duty officers allegedly attempting to drown Dallas woman Alicia Turner. Within hours, the district attorney announced a grand jury investigation. Keller and Shaw were placed on unpaid suspension pending possible charges. For the first time, the walls around them began to crack. But victory came with a price. Alicia started receiving threats again, more vicious this time. Her car tires were slashed. Her mother's home was vandalized with slurs. Every night she double-checked the locks. The faint sound of helicopters reminding her how fragile safety really was. Still, she refused to back down. "They want me scared," she told Jamal one night. "They want me to feel small again. I can't give them that." Days later, the city announced a public hearing. The police chief, the mayor, community leaders, and Alicia herself would attend. It was meant to rebuild trust. But everyone knew it was a performance, a way to cool public anger. Still, Alicia showed up. The hearing was held in a crowded civic hall. Cameras flashed as she walked to the podium in a simple white dress, symbolic, unshakable. The mayor started with scripted words about healing and understanding. But when Alicia took the microphone, the room went silent. "I was nearly drowned by men who wear your badge," she began, her voice steady. "And for weeks, this city treated my life like a rumor. I'm here to say, I'm not invisible. My body is evidence. My fear is proof. And my survival is not your permission to move on." The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was thunderous. Reporters captured every word, her speech trending online within minutes. But what happened next would define the story forever. Midway through the hearing, Tanya approached the bench with breaking news. The Department of Justice had just announced a federal investigation into the Dallas PD for patterns of racial bias and misconduct. The hall erupted. Keller and Shaw, watching from the back with their attorneys, went pale. For the first time, the system they relied on to protect them had turned its gaze inward. In the days that followed, arrests were made. Both officers were taken into custody and charged with attempted murder, assault, and civil rights violations. Their mugshots hit the news that night. Faces once smug, now hollow. Outside the courthouse, crowds chanted Alicia's name like an anthem. But justice wasn't instant, and Alicia knew that. She watched the coverage quietly from her living room, tears rolling down her face. Jamal placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he whispered. But Alicia shook her head. "No," she said softly. "We did it. Every person who refused to look away did it." In that moment, she understood something deeper. The fight wasn't about 2 men. It was about a culture that allowed them to believe they could drown a black woman and walk away smiling. That belief had drowned too many before her. She wasn't just reclaiming her voice. She was forcing the world to listen. The next morning, Alicia received a call from a producer at a national news network. "Ms. Turner," the voice said, "we'd like to feature your story in a segment on racial justice and reform. You inspired millions." Alicia looked out her window at the rising sun. She was exhausted, but alive, and for the first time in months, the air felt lighter. "Tell the truth," she said quietly. "That's all I want." Months passed, but the echoes of that day never left Alicia. Every night when she closed her eyes, she could still feel the cold hands pushing her down, the water filling her lungs, the silence of people who watched but didn't act. Yet now, those memories no longer paralyzed her. They propelled her. The trial of Brian Keller and Derek Shaw began 6 months later. The courthouse was surrounded by reporters, protesters, and onlookers holding signs demanding justice. Alicia walked through the crowd with her head high, her mother's hand clasped tightly in hers. Inside, the air was heavy, thick with tension. Cameras weren't allowed in the courtroom, but everyone knew the world was watching. The prosecution presented the footage, every second of it. The laughter, the struggle, the underwater silence. They played it frame by frame. Some jurors turned away. Others wept. Alicia sat still, tears slipping down her face, but her gaze fixed forward. The defense tried to claim it was a misunderstanding, an accident that escalated. But the truth was too visible now, too undeniable. When the verdict came, the courtroom held its breath. Guilty, on all counts. The words echoed like thunder. Keller and Shaw were sentenced to 25 years each, not just for assault, but for attempted murder under color of law. For once, accountability had pierced through the armor of the system. The crowd outside erupted in tears, applause, and disbelief. It was justice, rare, imperfect, but real. After the verdict, Alicia walked out into the sunlight, the hum of chants filling the air. Cameras swarmed her, but she didn't speak right away. Instead, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath, letting the warmth of the day settle on her skin. The same sun that had watched her nearly die now bore witness to her rebirth. When she finally stepped to the microphone, her voice carried calm power. "Today wasn't just about me," she said. "It was about everyone who's ever been told to stay quiet, to take it, to move on. I refuse to drown in silence. And now none of us have to." That clip spread across the internet like wildfire. News anchors replayed it, activists quoted it, and for weeks her face became a symbol of resistance, not as a victim, but as a survivor who changed the narrative. Donations poured into her GoFundMe, not just for her medical bills, but to support what she announced next. The Turner Foundation for Justice, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting victims of police violence, providing mental health care, and funding legal aid for families silenced by the system. Her first act as founder was to return to the same community pool where it all happened. The place was eerily quiet that morning, empty except for the rippling water and the reflection of a new plaque near the entrance. It read, "In honor of Alicia Turner, a woman who refused to sink." She stood there for a long time, not with anger, but with reflection. A mother walking by recognized her and stopped. "Thank you," the woman said softly, her young daughter at her side. Alicia smiled. "Don't thank me," she said. "Just don't look away next time." That moment summed up everything Alicia had fought for: awareness, courage, and accountability. Because silence was complicity, and she'd spent her life learning that truth the hardest way possible. As months turned into a year, reforms began quietly spreading through Dallas. The police chief resigned. New training programs on racial bias and de-escalation were implemented. Body cams became mandatory even for off-duty officers. National conversations reignited about civilian oversight and the power of video evidence. Alicia's story was cited in congressional hearings, in university lectures, in churches and schools alike. Her survival had sparked something far larger than she ever imagined, a ripple that had become a wave. Still, she remained humble. When reporters tried to call her a hero, she shook her head. "Heroes don't ask to be born out of trauma," she said once during an interview. "I just did what I had to do, what any of us should do when faced with injustice. Breathe, stand, and fight." In quieter moments, Alicia returned to nursing. She found comfort in the familiar rhythm of hospital halls, the beeping of monitors, the lives she helped heal. Some patients recognized her, some didn't, but those who did would sometimes whisper, "You're her, aren't you?" And she would smile softly, saying, "Yes, but more importantly, I'm still here." One evening, after finishing a late shift, she drove past a mural downtown, her likeness painted in vibrant colors, water swirling around her, her eyes fierce and determined. Across the top were the words that had defined her journey: "We rise from what tried to drown us." Alicia parked her car, stepped out, and stared at the mural in silence. Tears welled in her eyes, not from pain this time, but from pride. It wasn't just her story anymore, it was every story. Every name turned into a hashtag. Every life cut short. Every survivor who kept breathing despite the weight pressing down. She pulled out her phone, snapped a picture, and posted it with a single caption: "This isn't the end. It's the beginning." And with that, she drove home, the hum of the engine blending with the echoes of a movement she'd unwillingly started but wholeheartedly embraced. Because sometimes the most powerful revolutions don't begin with marches or speeches. They begin with survival.